All right, so if I could get your attention for a moment, we're going to introduce our speaker for today. Sonny, who is our speaker for the day, is the CEO and founder of the Blue Gene Network, which is a managed IT services company. He's also a member of EO and our newest SAP. And he's got a lot more detail on how he arrived at this point in his life, but he did share one funny story with me that he started out in life going to be a minister. And did you get your doctorate or master's in divinity? And after he finished school, he decided that no church that was worthwhile would actually hire him, so he got into the world of business instead. So I think that's how he told me the story.
Thank you very much again. I started my first company when I was about 20. Actually, I guess if you think about it, when I was 13, I started my first company. I actually carried papers when I was 13, and we had to run it like our own business. I had to collect from the clients, and I had to pay the guy who sold me the papers, and that was in Staten Island, New York City. So like you guys, I've been doing this stuff for a while. My last two businesses have been IT companies. I started one in 2001 called the Strickland Group, which is still here in town. Sold that business and started Blue Gene Networks. And so what we're going to talk about today is what is it like when the day you get breached for a cybersecurity breach, okay? We're going to cover the day in the life of the breach. I really hope you never need this, okay? We're going to talk about the shocking truth about bank fraud. And one of the things I wanted to tell you is, I don't know if you know this or not, but your business bank checking account is not insured if you get fraudulently have money taken out of it. We're going to talk some about that and what not to do when you get attacked. This is even more important than what to do, what not to do when you get attacked. And then what you must do to protect yourself when you breach. Now, I have a free bonus, guys. I'm not selling anything here today. I'm doing this just to get to know you. But if you want, I will come over there, and if I will do a dark web search for you. Does everybody here know what the dark web is? Anybody, or when you hear that term, you've heard it, but you don't know what it is? Anybody know what it is? Okay, good. I see a few nodding heads. The dark web is the part of the internet that's not on websites. It's way deep, and you have to know where you're going when you get there, and that's where they buy and sell all the information that you've got. It's estimated that 70% of the web is dark web. Give you an idea on that. So we'll do that for free for you guys to get to know you. We'll do a dark web scan on you, your people in your company, all of the people. All you have to do is let me know at the end of the meeting. We've got room for 10 of those this month, and we're going to do that for you. So who am I? I'm an EO member. I was an EO member before I was an SAP. I'm a veteran security strategist. I've been doing this security work since '93. I have been in... my company serves over 50 companies in Fort Worth, and they serve them coast to coast. We were just in north of Washington, D.C. installing a network, out in L.A. installing a network, and in South Carolina installing a network within the last 3 or 4 months. And we maintain these networks for these companies that are based in Fort Worth but have branches all over the United States. We're specialists in thinking ahead in IT. We're kind of futurists when it comes to what's going to happen. And our clients have given us, just to give you an idea, they've given us over 100 5-star ratings on Google. So if you go out and look at our Google ratings, they rave about us. They think we're fantastic. Here's an example. Tony Loth, he owns Bailey Hydraulics here in town. He says that we're unmatched. So I've got dozens and dozens and dozens of these, but I figured one would be enough for you guys to see. Our people that we work with really love working with us. So that's one of the reasons we do it. Now, why am I talking to you about this now? Urgently now. It's been my experience that my clients, and they're getting me talking to them all the time, are absolutely ignorant of what they need to do as far as cybersecurity. And they're absolutely unaware of whether they're protected or not. So I want to get you to a position, because it's not whether you're going to get breached or whether you've got enough security. It's when you're going to get breached and when are you going to have enough security. Okay? You're never going to be not breached. If you live long enough, 3 to 5 years, you're likely to get breached. Almost all the attacks, 80% of the attacks now, are happening to companies less than $10 million a year. Okay? Here's the 2014 to 2018, and I know if you can see this right here, it's gone from $800 million in ransoms over to $2.7 billion in 2018, and it's accelerating at almost double per year now. So by 2020, it's got to be, I guess, probably close to $1 billion a year in ransoms. I was told this today by one of the friends around the table that there are countries like North Korea that are funding the government based on these ransoms. So please be aware of this. So you will likely be attacked. You don't like to think that. You think I'm an insurance company, I've got a lot of security around me, I'm a bank, boy, we do the FINRA stuff and we're all around me. You will be attacked. So let's start with day one. This is an actual event that I'm talking about. It's not a hypothetical event. This is what happened in this company. About 6 a.m., Joe comes in. All these names have been changed, so you can't know who it is. Joe comes in, he can't get into the database. You guys all have that employee that comes in really early. He likes to get his email done. He wants to get his coffee. Joe came in, 6 a.m., he couldn't get into the database. By 6:15, file access in the network became impossible. By 6:30, files on PCs started locking up. Nobody knew what was going on yet. At 7 o'clock, Joe called the MSP, managed service provider, and he reported the issue. By 8 o'clock, the MSP calls back and they report they don't know what's going on and they'll be out there soon. So it's been 2 hours now, and the entire system, all the files on the server, most of the files on the workstations were completely encrypted. But we didn't know that at the time, because in the beginning of one of these events, you don't know what's going on. You're lost, and it's a fog. You think you know, and every time you turn around, you don't know, and you look at this, and you don't know, and it feels like your antivirus system is going crazy on your computer, and everything is running sluggishly, and this is working, why isn't that working, and I can get in, and some of these files are cached, and you just don't know, and the amount of fog and not knowledge is hard to overestimate. But at this time, as the business owner, you're getting scared, because you know something bad is happening. By 8:30, the MSP there, and they don't like what they see. They think you might be under attack. By 9 o'clock, a ransom comes up on the machine. So what do you do now? This is what the ransom pop-ups look like when they come up. It's really important to understand this at this point. The ransom guys have changed what they've been doing. Initially, they would put an encryption on your system, and they would encrypt your system, and they'd tell you, we want you to give us all your money, so we can have we'll give you the key. And then what's happened is, guys, backups have gotten better and better, and so the people are not getting as much money out of the companies. The people just say, heck with that. They cut the cord, they reinstall all the servers. It's a pain in the neck, and they keep going. So what these guys are doing right now, the average length of time that a hacker is on your system before he encrypts your system is 200 days. During that time, he's exfiltrated most of your data out to the internet and put it on the dark web. If you have credit card numbers, if you have personal identifiable information, if you have HIPAA information, anything that includes a person's name and a diagnosis. I was talking to a law firm this morning. They did not understand. They were under the HIPAA requirements because they were a personal injury company, and they had they had medical records on their server for their cases. But that's required to be under HIPAA law. If you have a person's name and a diagnosis, you're covered under HIPAA. It's really kind of important to understand that the reasons are because we're going to find out later it has to do with reporting. But if you've got financial information, personal identifiable information, anything that could be covered under any of the privacy laws which are coming out, like the General Data Protection Law in Europe, or the California Data Protection Law, or the New York Data Protection Law. We're starting to see one in Illinois now, a data protection law. You come under these laws not when you work with companies in those areas. You come under these laws when anybody in your database is a citizen of those states. So the first steps, they all gather in the conference room and they start talking to each other. Well, we noticed this server's doing this. We noticed that server's doing that. The next thing they've decided, okay, it looks like an attack. We have to do something. They're all scared. They're wondering how much it's going to cost us. They're thinking about, now imagine this was your business now. I want you to put yourself into the position of these people. If this was your business and you're sitting out there right now, you're wondering how you're going to meet client expectations, how you're going to deliver the order that's got to be done, how are you going to get into the ordering system to understand what's supposed to go out that day. Are we connected to anybody else's network? Well, fear starts setting in. And you got all those same things. Are we going to be able to make payroll? How are we going to let employees know? Just how stupid are we going to look to our clients and to our government and to the area around here when we have to report this? Because you do if it has more than 250 records in the database that was encrypted. And what are we supposed to do now? Now, at this point, I want to talk to you a little bit about your cybersecurity insurance. One of the things I asked a client the other day is, tell me about your cybersecurity policy, and they said, we don't have a cybersecurity policy. And I said, well, why not? They said, because you never told us that we needed to buy one. I don't sell insurance. I sell a managed service provider, but they believed that it was my responsibility to tell them. So I am making it a mission to tell you, you need cyber insurance and you need a lot of it. Cyber insurance, if it's set up right, will cover you for the cost of the data recovery specialists that you're going to need. It will cover the cost of the lawyers that you're going to need. It will cover the cost of the reporting that you're going to need. It'll cover the cost of the software that you're going to have to sell, you have to give away free to all of your clients to protect their systems because their information was exfiltrated out to the dark web. And it will cover the ability for an IT company to come in there and get it all set up back together. Some versions of this insurance will also cover the loss in the bank account that you have. So right now, I don't know if you guys are aware, but the biggest hacks we see these days that where we're seeing lots and lots of money going out the door really quickly are wire fraud hacks. What happens is somebody does what's called a phishing attack. Phishing attack is where somebody sends you a pretend email saying that your credentials are out of date and you need to update them. And you go into that website and you update your credentials, but what you're really doing is giving the credentials to the bad guy. When you give the credentials to the bad guy, he logs into your mail service and forwards every mail from your president out to him. And he makes another rule that says, if I send an email as a president, delete it out of sent items. So you can't see that he's sending email. And what he does is he becomes a man in the middle. He traps the record coming in so that when you he can send somebody like on your staff an email to tell them to do something. And when the email comes back, it doesn't go into the president's folder. It goes back out to the bad guy in the web. And so he can stand there as the president of the company and say, listen, I need to wire so-and-so company money. And the person says, we don't usually do wires this way. Are you sure? He says, listen, I can't get to you right now. I've got to have this wire done. I need you to do this wire right now. Don't mess around with me. Here's the number. Get the wire done. The guy in the accounting department says, I'm going to lose my job if I don't do this. So he goes and wires $150,000. One of my clients did this. Wired $150,000 without checking with his boss verbally. If you don't already have in your company a rule that says we don't do any wire transfers without verbal confirmation from a person you know enough to recognize their voice, don't do it. But some of these insurance policies can cover this kind of wire fraud. Okay? So they pulled out their plan, and by the way, how many of y'all have a cybersecurity incident response plan in your company? I know he does, bank guy. Do you know where it is? But do you know where it is? My manager does. And what if he's not there that day? Good point. Okay. How about you? Do you know where your cybersecurity plan is? I'm sure it's in Ruston, Louisiana. Yeah. And if you get hacked over here, do you guys know to look for that one in Ruston, Louisiana so you can act that way? Good. Banks have a lot higher regulation than other people do about this stuff. But I want to tell you, this is super important. You need to have a cyber response plan, and here's why, and I'm going to walk you through this. By the way, like I said earlier, it's not your MSP's job to have a cybersecurity plan. It's your job to have a cybersecurity plan. Yeah.
Real quick, I might reiterate your wire fraud. It's rampant. We get probably hit every day from some of our customers, and we've got enough processes in place that we normally stop them all.
He was saying that the wire fraud is rampant. It's going on every day, and they stop most of them. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
They stop most of them at the bank. Don't trust your bank to be as good as Origin. Okay? Most of the banks are trying to do stuff about this, but the amounts of money that are being lost in wire fraud are amazing. Hey, it's not your MSP's job to come up. Yeah. For the guys online.
I'll add to that because with Origin Bank, with EO, we have our bank accounts there. Anytime Ronnie wants to wire somebody some money, somebody from their home office calls me on my cell phone to confirm that the wire needs to go out.
That's wonderful. That's a great process. So you got to have a process for that. But it's your job to know what happens and what you need to do in a disaster. Let's talk through that. 50% of businesses will never fully recover from an attack like this. In fact, one company I said 50% of businesses go out of business if they get a major cyber attack. Okay, so first steps. Your people are not going to know what to say. You must tell them what to say. Okay? Second, have a script. Give them the script. Tell them not to deviate from the script. You don't want somebody calling in, asking about their order, and your person on the order line saying, oh, we can't get to that. We've had a big cybersecurity attack, and we don't know what we're going to do. Okay, what you need to do is you have a script and say, I'm sorry, there's a delay right now on our systems. We'll get back with you as quickly as we can. That's all that needs to go out of the company. You don't need anybody to know anything at this point. Okay, have a script. Give it to the people, tell them what to say in calls, emails, everything else. No communication outside the company about what's going on at this point. That'll come later. Don't wing it at all and say as little as possible. Okay? Next step, contact your cyber insurance company. This is why cyber insurance is so important. You need to involve these people as early as you can in the event. When you involve them in it, they will guide you through the process because they do this all the time and you don't. So what the first thing they're going to say is let's get an incident response company involved. And that incident response company is going to take over the process, not your MSP, not your IT guy, but their forensic guy is going to take over and say, okay, let's protect things, let's not reboot things, let's make sure that nothing happens that's going to keep us from understanding what's going on here. They'll get the lawyers involved early. They're going to get them involved early not because we want to sue anybody or want to be protected from being sued. They're going to do it because when you get the lawyers involved, there's an opportunity for attorney-client privilege to be involved in every decision you make in this process. If you talk about your attorney to it and then he tells your IT guy to do it, that what you're doing can't be discovered later in a lawsuit that comes against you that would result from this. Okay, because it's attorney-client privilege. The incident response company will begin taking steps to figure out what's happening here. They're going to want to know what your firewall logs are. If you reboot your firewall or turn it off, those go away in most cases. They disappear. So you need to leave your firewall on. If you reboot your server or shut it off, things will be destroyed. Sometimes they won't even come back up after a ransom attack. So you've got to leave things on. So what you do is they're going to tell you probably to unplug the Ethernet cables in the back. Or if they're virtual servers, they're going to put them onto another network so that they're still running, but they're not connected to your network anymore. Next, follow the playbook. This is getting back into that incident response plan. Preserve the evidence. At this point, the incident response company is telling these guys, we need to preserve all the evidence we can because we have to find out if your data was exfiltrated. If your data was exfiltrated out onto the internet, they can release it to the world and everything that's out there can be reported. But if you pay the ransom and they delete the exfiltrated data, you may not have as big of a reporting requirement. Don't reboot anything, don't unplug the servers from the wall, unplug them from the Ethernet cable, okay? And don't reboot the firewall like we talked before. We already talked about the lawyers. I'm going to skip past this, but they're going to give, here's one that's kind of not obvious. You need to designate somebody in your company to write down every communication that you make with anybody. Say, we talked to Joe, we told him this was going on. We talked to Mary, we told him this was going on. Then start looking for a disaster recovery, disaster communications firm. There's a couple of great ones here in Fort Worth. I don't know if they're EO members, but they're companies that can help you craft a message to tell the world about what's going on. You don't want to go out there and say you were hacked. You don't want to go out and say you were encrypted. You had a vulnerability. They're going to tell you the message to say, then it will sound less flamethrower. Okay, this first day don't send any emails to people explaining what, in fact, don't send any emails at all. If you're going to tell somebody something, talk to them. We don't want anything that's discoverable later, okay? Call them just after talking to the attorney. Don't go get Bitcoin now because, number one, it just absorbs cash that you can't do anything with. And number two, if you get the Bitcoin now, the guy may know that you've got Bitcoin and be able to get the ransom out of you more quickly. Don't lose focus on your clients and vendors and what you've said to them. Be very careful. It's very easy to get sloppy as this first day goes on. You begin to say things that are not the right things to say. Beginning of the day, it was all, oh man, if we're going to have a day off. By the end of the day, everybody's sweating bullets and they're wondering if they've got a job. And people's emotions change in that moment. And they start saying things that they shouldn't say. Now go home and get some sleep. This has been one of the worst days of your business. You've talked to lawyers. It's never good to be talking to lawyers. That means that something bad has happened. Not that the lawyers are bad, but it means something bad has happened. You've been talking, you're wondering if you're going to have a business. You're wondering if you're going to be able to make payroll. You're wondering if you can even get into your bank account. This is not a good day. Day two. Okay, you got to get a hold of your bank and you've got to find out how you can raise your wire limits because the bank wisely has set your wire limits low, but the guy who's asking for ransom is asking for over $1 million in ransom. So your bank you're trying to wrestle with them. You say, hey, I got to have a bigger wire fraud. He says, no, I'm not doing that. You're going to lose all your money. You're going to come after me and you're going to have this wrestle that has to go on. Stuff is starting to come back to life. Restorations are starting to come back to life. Desktops, every one of them has to be re-imaged. I don't know if you realize how long of a process that is, but re-imaging it, all the data on it's lost. You re-image it, you put it back on there, and everybody has to go in there and configure their email, configure their Dropbox, configure all their settings, get all their website configurations back. If you have a plan for this ahead of time by having these things in OneDrive or something like that where they can just download to your computer, you have a ton of work to get all those PCs up. And re-imaging of PCs probably takes 30 minutes a PC and then another 3 days for your employee to get all his stuff set up right on it so he can actually get his job done. Your incident response company tells you that all the data was encrypted and it was exfiltrated to the internet over the last 90 days. You're hanging out in the wind. Guys, you're not hanging out in the wind because you were bad people. You're not hanging out in the wind because you were corrupt in your security or anything else. You're hanging out in the wind because you got hacked. There is not a network in the world that if a guy does a directed attack on, he can't get into. Kevin Mitnick has proven this over and over and over again. His job, his whole business, is getting into companies that people don't think that you can get into, and he does it every single time, every single day. The advantage you've got is most of these attacks are automated. They're not some little kid in a room attacking you. And since they're automated, and that means they're doing it to everybody, and so if you're slightly or significantly more secure in your company, it's likely they're going to go to the other companies they can get into before you. But with phishing and some other things, how many of y'all have two-factor authentication on every account you've got? So do you have it on all your email accounts?
Not all of them.
Do you have it on your banking accounts?
Yeah.
Do you have it on your desktop to get into your desktop? How about your email? And how about do you use Office? Does anybody here use Office 365? It's a pretty common thing. Did you all know you can get two-factor authentication for free with Office 365? And they want you to have it. When you get those things, you basically stop those man-in-the-middle attacks pretty easily. The ransom has been negotiated down from $2 million to $900K by the incident response company. They're talking to the hackers. That's one of the things the incident response company is doing it. I've seen, for a hospital hack, I've seen a ransom negotiated down from $5 million down to $17,000. Don't try to do this yourself. Get an incident response company involved. It's going to cost you about $15,000 to $20,000 to get that incident response company. Okay? Are there ways to speed up the process? That's what you're asking this next morning. Do you pay the ransom? Exfiltration is out there. It's going to be out there and made public. How much of that stuff that you have on your network would be bad? If you're working in a CMMC government manufacturing business, you're going to lose all your government contracts. If you're working in a HIPAA environment, you have reporting requirements that are unbelievable over the next several years. If you're working in a FINRA requirement, you've got even more restrictive things you're going to have to do to reporting. And I don't know if you guys know this, but if you have more than 250 records in your database that has been exfiltrated, you have to report it to the Attorney General within 2 months here in Texas. Cost for notifying is going through the roof. It's like, estimate right now is $100 per record in your database that it's going to cost you to notify and take care of your people. So your first vendor calls you, and your VPN to them has resulted in them getting encrypted as well. How many of y'all remember the, I think it was the Target attack? Do y'all remember? Do y'all know how they got hacked? Air conditioning company. There was a managed air conditioning company, had a Internet of Things device on their air conditioning that had never been patched. Not a server, not a workstation, an air conditioning box that was on their network so it could report back to the people at, I'm just saying Honeywell because Honeywell makes that kind of stuff, not because it was Honeywell. It was a local air conditioning company. And they'd never patched it. They never put any passwords on it other than a default password. The people got into it. They used that to get into the PCs. They used that to get into the servers, and they got into the database, and that's how they got all the records there. How many things do you have on your home network now? I was shocked the other day. I've got a new wireless thing at my house that it's a pretty advanced one. It does mesh networking all over my house. So anywhere you're in the house, you get good internet. And it has a thing in it to say how many devices. And I knew I counted my PCs, and I had like 8 or 10 PCs at the house, probably, if you count everything that's at the house. And I got in there, and there was over 30 devices on my network. I have lights that are robotically controlled. I have the Ring doorbell. I have garage door was up and shut things. I've got alarm systems that are tied in there. I've got the Google Home speakers. I got 4 or 5 of those at home, just so we can play music throughout the house. I mean, you don't realize how much stuff you've got on your network, and I bet you it's not patched. And I bet it's worse at your office. You have to be thinking about this. Though that VPN, their VPN team, they have an incident response team too, and their incident response team now needs to talk to your lawyers and your incident response team. What do? You go back to the lawyers, you're talking to them. Now their lawyers are starting to talk to your lawyers. Okay? And this was another long day that you just went through. Day 3, wire finally gets done, and you have a decryptor. The attacker says your data has been deleted on the dark web, and he's a really trustworthy source. Some of your backups are way behind and you've lost data permanently, and there's nothing you can do about that. The incident response company tells you what happened. You had a camera on your network that wasn't patched. The password got phished, access to a PC, access to a server, credential elevation, and then exfiltration in the attack. He says they were on there for 90 days. So you got to do an apology tour. This is something you're going to do after you've been attacked. You're going to go to all your clients, and you're going to go to all of your vendors, and you're going to do an apology tour because your disaster PR firm put you on the tour, and you're going to say the right things, and you're going to smile, and you're going to apologize, and you're going to do everything you can to make their world better because you're going to lose your business if you don't. Then you're going to report to the government. Now your attorney tells you to report. You report the breach to the Attorney General of Texas. You report the breach to California, to New York, and to the EU because of having their citizens in your database. And you have to do the research to find out if they're in your database and if they're in those areas. It's a year later. You lost $300,000 in profits. but you're glad to be alive. Very few clients have left you. Pretty much they all stayed. You talk to your lawyer on a weekly basis about the lawsuits that are still going on over this thing. And you're much better now in cyber because you've figured it out. You've been through it. You've added the things necessary to do it. You've got firewalls that you didn't have before. You've got geofencing to make sure that things can't happen. You've got two-factor authentication that goes to an app, not to your text. How many of y'all have TikTok on your phones? Anybody in here? You might be too old to have TikTok on your phones. You're probably a teenager if you got TikTok on your phones. Did you know that the number you get from your bank that's whenever you log into your account, that tells you to text that number to your phone, and then you put that number into your bank account and it lets you in. Finally, it's the two-factor authentication on your bank. TikTok takes everything that goes into the clipboard on your phone and sends it to China. In fact, there's a bunch of other apps on your phone that do that too. The clipboard, even on an iPhone, is completely open because apps have to be able to transfer back and forth. And most of the two-factor authentication is sending you a characters by text, which is copied then, and then all those guys have that. It's very easy to do a hack on that. Very easy. If you use an app like Duo or something like that for your two-factor authentication, your two-factor authentication becomes a lot simpler. It's not terribly expensive, like $4 a user per month, and it bypasses the clipboard and gives you the two-factor authentication without that stuff. You're much better in cyber. You're much better in your policies and procedures now. You're really grateful you had a cyber incident response plan at that point. You had a cyber company to call when it went down. You knew what you were going to do, and you had ran and tested it, and you still lost $300,000. And that doesn't include the amount that you've lost through the insurance company to pay the ransom, and it doesn't include the lawyer's fees that have yet to be paid. So, how do you protect your organization? What to do now? Number one, do a threat assessment. What is a threat assessment? When you go to your house, what's the most valuable thing in your home? Think that in your mind right now. What's the most valuable thing in your home? Besides your spouse. I always forget to say that. Somebody always says, my wife or my kids. Besides people and dogs, what's the most valuable piece of property you own? It could be certificates of some kind. It could be jewelry. It could be electronics. It could be a camera. It could be a lot of different things. Do you protect your screwdrivers the same way you protect that really, really valuable thing? No. Sometimes you have a safe. Sometimes you've got a safety deposit box. Sometimes you've got a lockable. Sometimes your wife just hides them. Okay, puts them in the freezer. I have one friend that put their stuff in blocks of ice in the freezer. Can't get to it, but nobody else is going to get it. So the first part of a threat assessment is understanding what you need to protect. And your business is the same way. Not all your data on your network is as dangerous as some of the other data. But anything with credit card numbers, with personal identifiable information, with HIPAA requirement data, with FINRA requirement data, any kind of data of that type is more valuable to the attackers than your marketing materials. Okay? So one of the first things you want to do is segment off the data that you need to protect from everything else and then really protect. Don't have to put tons of encryption and stuff like that, but be wise enough to do what we call data classification. Secondly, create an action plan once you've done your threat assessment. What's likely to happen? What can we do about it? Thirdly, ongoing maintenance. Now, in the cybersecurity framework from the National Institute of Standards, it says there's 5 standards to doing security. Number 1, you've got to do an assessment. You've got to know what you've got to protect. Number 2, you've got to have policies that say this is what we're going to do. Policies like bring your own device policy, policies like use of the wireless network, policies like use of the computers at your office, policies like what to do if we get breached, stuff like that. Then you have to have procedures, which involves kind of the tool sets you're going to put in place. Okay? And then you've got to have what's called controls around those. In other words, if you put the firewall in place, a year later, is it still set up correctly, or has somebody gone in there and turned something off to make something work and never forgot to turn it back on? This is what happens across all security. So you've got to have control. Somebody was added to an administrative group that shouldn't have been because they needed to make an application run, but nobody went and took them back out of that group, and so they're still in the administrative group. So the controls are basically reminders that say, go back and look. And then those controls, the last one is to have a complete disaster recovery plan for when you do go down, how are you going to get back up? Those are the 5 steps of data security, and that involves ongoing maintenance. So I've got the free thing for you. It's a dark web assessment. We'll do that for your company if you want to. We'll also give you a free security analysis. This is not we're not going to run a tool on your network. We're going to sit down with you and ask you these questions. It's about 50 questions that we're going to ask you that's going to build a chart for you based on your company's responses to those questions, and it'll be low to high threat and low to high probability. And you'll be able to figure out for yourself where your most serious risks are. When the risk assessment's done, you'll know if you and your employees' login credentials are being sold on the dark web. I can guarantee you they are. If I take your domain and put it out there, I can give you back not only the person whose email's out there, I can tell you the passwords that are out there on the web. Okay? If your IT systems and data systems are truly secured from hackers and criminals, we'll know after we take that other bigger test. And a health score for your network at your place. Now I'm going to give you that free. That's about a 450. I mean, it's 2 hours of $175 per hour engineer time and the analysis of putting it together and giving it to you. So it really is a $450 assessment. There's no obligation to buy. I'm not even trying to sell anything here. I'm just trying to make sure that you guys are more secure. I can only offer this to 10 people a month. So you need to get to me if you want it. You need to get that to me. I should have brought some forms where you could fill it out, but if you'll give me your business card or write it on the back that you want this, I'll do it. If you're on the webcast, if you'll email me at sunnylowe@bluejeannetworks.com, that's SUNNYLOWE @bluejeannetworks.com. I will do that. We'll do 10 a month. If I get 20, I'll do 10 more next month. I'll just do that so that we get the right number. Everybody gets it that wants it. But it's by application only. I'm not just going to throw it out there. You got to ask me. So do me a favor. Don't put this off. It will happen to you. You will be hacked. And you're going to be stunned when it does. How many of y'all have ever had your car broken into? Do you remember how violated you felt when that happened? This is way worse than that. This is way worse than that. Okay? Now, any questions? Way back over. Let's start up here. Yeah.
I just want to make one observation.
Get it up there for the guys in the webcast.
Oh, yeah, I've been working with the insurance companies on cyber insurance. If you do what you're doing here, you can negotiate with them an incredible deal. Most people just take the policies with all these exclusions, so this would pay for itself 10 times over, just getting cyber insurance. I want your card.
Yep. Over here.
All right, so Sonny, 2 questions for you. All right, one is, so you're recommending paying them. What can you do to preemptively prevent that from happening? And 2, do you recommend storing information like that on the web in the cloud, in a cloud-based system, or storing it locally?
So the first question was, what can you do to prevent it? And I can give you a tons of technical answers what we do to prevent it. And if you call me up, I'll tell you what we do. But essentially, you've got to put the tools in place and the processes in place and the procedures in place to make sure that the tools don't fall out of grace and don't get set up incorrectly. And then you've got to have discipline around the process, like anything else, to make sure it keeps happening. And then you become a hardened target. And it's not like nobody can break into your house. It's just if they see 4 locks on the door, they're going to go to the next door where there's only 1 lock on the door. Okay, and the second question was storing stuff on the web?
Yeah, versus in the cloud.
So if you're going to store stuff in the cloud, I really want you to have 2-factor authentication on the account. I really want you to have a secure way to get to that account. And I really want you to understand the kind of data you're storing and whether you need to be in like for instance, you cannot put military contracting data in a non-military contracting cloud. You've got to actually put it on a government cloud if you're going to do that. So it does matter the kind of data that you're going to do and where you can put it in the cloud. But the cloud can be made secure. But let me tell you this, there is no difference of it being on your network or being in the cloud. The question is, are you securing it in both places and are you backing it up in both places? Okay? Yeah. Oh, you have to talk into that first and warm it up.
Is it on now?
Think so.
Okay, I have a question. So I'm realizing it might be different. We were hacked.
Mm-hmm.
And I just talked to a college we represent yesterday, and the entire college was hacked, so I know it's real. We have a system from Global Data Vault where they back everything up so we can be up in a few hours. Does if we're hacked, we have something that they can just duplicate the data and we'll be back up, let's say, in 24 hours. But are you saying this is different, that the information is still out there even if we are hacked? So is it something different, or do you do this in tandem with having it backed up?
So the question, I think, is has cyber attacks changed? That's one of your questions, if I'm understanding it correctly. Cyber attacks used to be, hey, we'll encrypt your data. Now they encrypt it and send it off into the dark web. So even if you unencrypt it, it's still out there to be sold.
But if you have
The backup?
the backup and you just say, fine, you've got it, we'll just come back up under something else.
They will then take your data on the web and they'll put it out for everyone to use and everyone to see. All your emails, all of your bank account information, all of your private information, all the text messages they can get, all that stuff will be out there on the web.
Okay.
And so it is. Not sometimes if you pay the ransom, they'll erase it in the cloud. Yeah, but what are the options?
Oh, you mentioned cyber insurance. Can you tell us a little bit more about what we should be looking for in cyber insurance? Because it seems like there's the prices I've recently priced it, huge variations in prices.
Yeah, there really is. I'm not an expert in insurance, but you need to make sure that your cyber insurance policy will cover ransom, will cover the incident response team, will cover lawyers, and will cover probably the time you lost when your business isn't running, and will cover the communications plan that you need to tell everybody in all the incident response. And also penalties. Did you have a question on the web?
There's a question on the web. Yeah, you have to talk into the ball like this, people, okay? Contact information, please. That's what they want.
Contact information. So I'm Sonny Lowe. My company is Blue Gene Networks, and it's just like it sounds. Sonny Lowe, SUNNYLOWE. It's on the screen right now at bluegenenetworks.com. BLUEGEANNETWORKS.com. Any other questions? Have I scared you? I didn't mean to scare you, but I do want to move you toward some of these choices. Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about the two-factor when it comes in your phone, because I set up two-factor identification. We did everything after we were hacked. But, it comes to my phone. It texts me on my phone and gives me that number to get in. But since it changes all the time, is that still secure?
It will depend on whether someone's really trying to get into your network. If someone has managed to get one of those apps on your phone and can read that data, they can stand next to you, and when you get that text, they can use that text, log into your email, add a secondary email into that account, and then make their own two-factor authentication, and now you won't even know that there's another account that's been added. Now, banks have a lot of security around that. They're going to send you an email saying, hey, you've added another account, and other things like that, but don't trust them to do those things. I mean, if you can, use two-factor authentication. It's better than nothing, but realize that you want to limit the number of unusual apps you have on your phone apps that you don't use all the time, you need to delete. Apps that have been flagged as dangerous, like TikTok, you want to delete. And then once you've done that, you're probably in better shape. Okay? Well, that's all I've got. Who's going to take over at this point? Ronnie? Oh, Tommy.
Tommy.
Was that any good, guys? This is only the second time I've given that demonstration. Was that good?
So, yeah, thank you, Sonny. That was great. I think that was very helpful. And for those of you that are not scared, you can talk to Sonny later. He'll get you there. But thanks everyone for being here. And that's the end of our presentation for today. So have a good afternoon.